Hi, as usual, I'm recording this video to help you set up your week. I'm recording this video as a sort of visual help for you to work with your argumentative essay, although I think that you have plenty of material to work with. You should be receiving today the resource on argumentation that I had been working on that I told you during the video conference, and you should also be working with your discussion partners in the group activity. You know that in my class we only have one group activity, and that is the one that you have been doing right now, that you started yesterday and will run until Saturday, but I will make an extension until Sunday. In this group activity, you're supposed to bring your argumentative essays, and you're supposed to discuss with your partners the process of your essay. You have to show your introductions, your as you make progress in the essay, and then finally in the last stage you're supposed to be doing proofreading and edition with your partners, with the help of your partners. I wanted to make this resource to be a visual help somehow, and to touch on the essentials of the argumentative essay, as I have done before with the summary, the expository writing, and the analysis essay. I have been saying that in the first place you have to understand the difference between argumentation and analysis and expository writing. When you write an argumentative essay, or you have to focus on one important idea that Luntford mentions. He quoted Aristotle that good arguments should make use of all the available means of persuading an audience. So Aristotle thought that argumentation was a way to persuade the audience. That's why the Aristotelian model focuses on the appeals, ethical appeals, emotional appeals, logical appeals. So it's important you consider this when understanding the classical model of argumentation, but I'm going to get there at some point during this presentation. When it comes to argumentation, I have been saying that it's a dialogue, it's a conversation. I tend to see argumentation as a constellation of voices, and you insert your voice in that constellation. It's not unidirectional, it is a conversation. It has two ways. It is a two-way process. Donald C. Bryant, a past professor from the University of Iowa, referred to persuasion as adapting ideas to people and people to ideas. It's not only that you want people to make a change or people to accept your ideas, but also you may want to consider your ideas in the larger context. So it's important that argumentation, you are open to listening to what other people say. Now we're working with a topic that is pretty tough, is ISIS, and considering the other voice is somehow difficult, knowing what is happening and the effects it's having on us. But it's important to consider the other side always, to understand what is happening, to be able to come up with a good argument and good reasoning. So, as I said, argumentation is a dialogue on a topic, and in which people make a claim. There are other claims, and then you make your claim. You simply say what you have to say, and always keeping in mind that it has to be a controversial one. It has to be polemic, otherwise the nature of argumentation as such is lost. When it comes to argumentation, the two possible directions when inserting your claims are, as Andrew Luntford in Everyone's an Author has mentioned, there are confrontational and non-confrontational ways to present your arguments. And she analyzed, as part of the non-confrontational, Carl Rogers' model and the invitational model, which are based on the commonalities of the sides. If you insert your claim, If you make a strong claim, a polemic one, you've got to consider the other side, and then you've got to understand what they are saying, and then try to find the common ground as a way to reach an understanding. And then the non-confrontational model, after presenting both positions and finding the commonalities, makes a claim that actually tries to bring together the two sides. The confrontational, this is a loose presentation of both the two confrontational models. This is not an in-depth presentation, just I'm touching on the essentials. Aristoteles is the first confrontational model, the one that brings the conflicting sides to a clash in a matter of speaking. And Aristoteles introduces the Aristotelian model introduces the topic with a claim, and if we are transferring this to the essay writing, at the end of your introduction, you present that claim using the Fennel approach. Then you present your case or position on the topic, explain the issue in detail, and why something has to be done about it. You do that in a couple of paragraphs, keeping in mind always the crux of the argument as presented by Luntford, and then present the counter-arguments, ideas opposed to yours, using a few paragraphs to explain or the other side, and then rebutting or refuting the opposition. In this Aristotelian model, you present proof, you analyze the other side, you may want to provide evidence that your side is the best one, then you do that in the rebuttal part. And then you present your conclusion. Your conclusion, you should remind your readers of your thesis and summarize the fundamentals of the argument. In Tolman's model, you do something similar, but the thing is that in Tolman's model is more based on logical appeal. You introduce your topic with a claim. At the end of your introduction, you present the claim. You always use the Fennel approach. You present your evidence, grounds, data, or reasoning behind the claim, usually factual information. Statistics, opinions of authorities. You could do that in one or two paragraphs. And a case essay is a great example of Tolman's model. You present your warrants or assumptions and how this links or connects the evidence to the claim. It answers this question: does the evidence that I presented show that my claim is true? So there has to be a connection between the evidence and the claim. So rephrasing again Tolman's model, you make a claim, you present the evidence, the assumptions, they have to be shared by the listener or the reader, and then why these assumptions defend the claim that you made. In Tolman's model, you present support or backing, additional support to the assumptions presented, and you restrict the claim. In Tolman's model, you make the claim narrow, so it usually presents qualifiers like most, usually, sometimes. So the Tolman model is more cautious. It avoids universal claims that lead nowhere. In Tolman's model, again, you present counter-arguments at some point, and the rebuttal of these counter-arguments, ideas opposed to yours, usually in the form of a continued dialogue, like a counter-argument and then an explanation why your argument that you're making is stronger than that counter-argument. So you rebut or refute the opposition one point at a time, and then you present your conclusion. In your conclusion, you should remind the reader again, as in any model, of why the thesis is important, why what you have done, and that's pretty similar to the classical model. So, in a nutshell, like the principles of the classical model are based on the three ideas, important ideas, ethos, logos, and pathos. Ethos appeals to credibility, why the person that is writing is credible, how the person has used sources. With credibility is the person speaking, quoting authorities on the topic, and logos appeals to logic, logical organization, the right word, the right phrases, being careful not to be offensive in the language that you choose. This part of being courteous, as John Langham says. And pathos appeals to emotions. So if you have used examples that actually are meant to touch the reader, and so that the reader can endorse your position. So when it comes to pathos, it might be interesting if you review Abraham Maslow's pyramid of human needs, and in selecting the examples, Maslow referred to a pyramid of human needs that go from the most basic to the highest and more intellectual. So it's important that in reviewing what kind of emotional appeals you want to make in your essays, to know that the expectations of your reader. The classical model is based more on appeals, on persuasive appeals, the ethical, logical, and emotional, while the Tolman's model that uses basically two of the key of the appeals that Aristotle referred to. In Tolman's model, you have more logical appeal, logical organization, and also the ethical part, stressing the credibility of sources, the credibility of the writer. How can you establish your credibility? By using your sources in an adequate form, by quoting correctly, by not plagiarizing, by respecting the opinion of authors, by not tampering with the quote, by not altering the meaning, by being truthful to yourself and to the research that you have done. So that's the way these models are different. In the Tolman's model, you have Aristotelian principle of logos, logic, and also ethos, the ethical presentation of the speaker. So basically this is what these two models are all about. Remember, there are two directions: confrontational, these two that I presented, the Aristotelian, the classical model, and Tolman's model, and the non-confrontational, the invitational, as Andrew Lanford says, and the Rogerian model, which is based on commonalities and rather than differences. I think this is important to understand the heart of these two directions, because when writing your argumentative essay, it's important that you're clear about this. One last thing I have to say is that please read the resource that I prepared for you. I think that I included everything that you need to know. I included models, possible models. I did some analysis. I deconstructed one argumentative essay that John Langham presented. So it's interesting that if you check on these models, because they might give you ideas when writing your essays. Keep in mind that you've got to make a claim after reading all the material that you have read so far, and then defend the claim. I wanted to say, as the last idea here, is that you have to choose one article, especially one that you haven't used before, and you can use side material from the selection I gave you. So the initial instructions are one article and one additional. I'm opening this up a little. You can use one mandatory article, and then you can use as many additionals as possible from the list I gave you. If you have to insert an additional one that I haven't registered, in the list I gave you, you can do that. One additional, as long as it is not the main article that you analyze. It has to be a side article. It has to be additional, complementary material, supplementary material, not the core. So if you have a question, please don't hesitate to ask it, and I'll be happy to answer.